Good evening, Tuesday, January 28th, 7 p.m. to order. I'd also like to take this opportunity to advise excuse me, that we have a last-minute addition to the agenda. It's a closed session item under Section 239(2)B of the Municipal Act 2001, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. One item, a matter pertaining to an identifiable employee. And now if we could all stand for the national anthem, please. Okay, the land acknowledgement statement. We would like to begin this meeting by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee peoples, acknowledging the One Bowl and Spoon Treaty. Okay, I'll look now to see if there's any disclosure of pecuniary interest, general nature thereof. Okay, seeing none. I'll move on to the mayor's remarks. So please note that the proceedings of this meeting are being broadcast live via the internet, recorded, and made available through the Township website and youtube.com. Also, if you have a phone, please ensure that it's turned off or at least on silent. I met with Crime Stoppers of Niagara yesterday, and we taped at Cogeco in Niagara Falls, and recorded an episode for Your TV Niagara. We spoke about Crime Stoppers, we spoke about human trafficking and some other issues here in Wainfleet. Apparently that's going to be airing in March sometime on Cogeco, and we'll post that to the website when we know when that is. I'll be attending the Regional Chair's Address on Thursday, January 30th at the Americana in Niagara Falls. On Tuesday, February 4th, I'll be flipping pancakes at Port Care's Reach Out Center, 9 o'clock to 10:30 a.m., all in support of ending homelessness. The Police Service Board will meet Thursday, February 13th at headquarters in Niagara Falls. And our township offices and the library will be closed for Family Day on Monday, February the 17th, and we'll resume regular hours the following day. And our next regular meeting of council will be held on Tuesday, February 18th. I'd also like to speak briefly regarding the money Wainfleet received through the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund, known as OCIF. I know there's been some comments by the public about that. We received the sum of $50,000, and many of the other municipalities, well, the closest to us was West Lincoln, and they received $272,000. So I went to the announcement of that at Reese Bridge, and I ended up being able to speak with our MPP about it, and I lodged a concern that our amount of money was so little compared to everybody else. And he shared that concern, and then I sent a formal letter to him requesting that he take that up with the Minister of Infrastructure and have a second look at it. Now, it's all by a formula, and they followed the formula, but we all know $50,000 doesn't do too much for us. So we have a lot of infrastructure cost as well. So, and now I'm going to look to the CAO, who has a little presentation on that, just to explain it more, simply because there was quite a bit of chatter about it in the media.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to members of council. So the Ontario Community Infrastructure Fund provides funding for small and rural northern Ontario municipalities to help develop and renew their infrastructure. The funding is formula-based. There is no separate application. Instead, the program uses standard reporting documents that are submitted by municipalities on a regular and ongoing basis. In this case, the township's 2020 OCIF grant of $50,000 was actually first announced in September of 2017. We actually received a notice back then which provided detailed calculations and explanation of the grant program and the allocations that would be forthcoming to Wainfleet in 2018, 2019, and 2020. So that notification indicated $50,000 per each of those years. And to date, we have confirmed that we have received and will be receiving the $50,000 this year. So as noted on the next slide, the allocation calculation is based on various common and comparable data for municipalities across the province. One of the key things that the program looks at is the core infrastructure of municipalities. And what they look at are the assets that are valued at cost based on Schedule 51 of something called a financial information return. So the categories from the FIR that the province looks at are the value of paved and unpaved roads, the value of bridges and culverts in the municipality, the value of traffic operations and roadside maintenance undertaken by the township, winter control activities, that includes both roadways, sidewalks, and parking lots. It also includes assets such as street lighting, wastewater collection and conveyance systems, which we have none, wastewater treatment and disposal systems, which in Niagara region are administered by the region itself, and we have none. An urban storm sewer system, a rural storm sewer system, and then water treatment, which again in region of Niagara is handled by the upper tier, and water distribution and transmission lines, which again we have none. So right at the outset, looking at the core values that the province utilizes in coming to a grant calculation, we don't have a lot of the sort of key figures that serve to bump up our numbers. But that said, the province does try, and on the next slide, you'll see the province does try to accommodate ability to pay, and what it does is it creates some weighted averages in order to balance things out to some extent. So one of the things they look at is the weighted property assessment of a municipality, which is a way of looking at the municipality's tax base. And again, the information, as I noted, that we're dealing with here was first released in 2017. So that means they were using 2016 and prior information in order to come up with those numbers. We are hopeful that we will be receiving, if the program continues, additional funds moving forward, perhaps with more updated information. The other thing that the province looks at from an ability to pay perspective is the median household income of the municipality, and that's based on Statistics Canada census data. And again, because the notice came out in 2017, the 2016 census data was not yet available, so they were using the 2011 census data. Bottom line is that the OCIF attempts to provide municipalities, on the next slide, with more core infrastructure and municipalities with more challenging economic conditions, the ability to receive proportionally more larger grants. Really, that's sort of the bulk of the explanation. If we skip ahead to the next couple of pages, we actually have the calculations that were provided to us in 2017, and which form the basis of our $50,000 dollar grant allocation. And I'm not going to run through all the numbers. I have made a copy for members of council, and what we can do is we can also make sure that this information gets publicly posted either on our website or through some other form, just so that the information is out there. But suffices to say that I think if you go 2 slides ahead, one back. Suffice it to say that at the end of the process, the Township of Wainfleet is being allocated $295.75 for every $100,000 of capital infrastructure that we currently own and maintain. So of that 200, and that's kind of halfway up the page there. So of that 295.75, if we move on to the next page, and hopefully this slide comes out, you'll see in the 2020 allocation at the bottom, we're getting 295.75, and you'll notice that 294 is the bare minimum. So we're getting basically $1.75 more per $100,000 infrastructure than the bare minimum, just because our numbers aren't quite there. So that's a quick and dirty explanation, hopefully. I'll try to answer any questions, but like I say, we will make sure this information is available publicly as well.
Okay, thank you, Will. Any questions from council on that? As I say, I have kind of lodged a bit of a complaint with our MPP and asked him to take it to Toronto and see if we can get another look at it. So we'll see where that goes. If you don't try, we don't get anywhere. So, councillors' announcements and remarks. Any councillor remarks or announcements? Councillor Cridlin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, just a thank you to the Wainfleet residents for sending me to my first Roma conference. It was this last week. And just want to report just a tiny bit about it. It was an opportunity. There was over 1,300 people there. I got to join Councillor Van Vliet as well. So I was able to use the time to connect with other townships on septic inspection programs that they're having in their areas. It was very relevant because it is all rural. Talked to them about fire halls. There were a lot of key themes, but I'd just like to highlight 2. Basically 1,300 people saying broadband, broadband, broadband. So it was a very, very consolidated message. And then the next is, you know, how important it is for collaboration. And I know Wainfleet does this really well, but just to highlight how important it was for the province's standpoint, or this government's standpoint. The person that was in charge of the, I guess it was the Ontario Modernization Grant process. They explained that there's over 300 applications from across Ontario, and they have to process them and then decide if they're going to approve them or not. And at the same time, he explained there were 27 applications that came from a collaboration of over 130 municipalities. And those were not only processed first, but all 27 were approved. So again, just demanding that we continue to collaborate, especially as a small municipality, was a great theme for us to take away. So again, thank you.
Thank you. And just for the public, Roma is the Rural Ontario Municipal Association. Any other comments, announcements? Councillor Van Vliet.
I was just going to say what Councillor Cridlin said, that we both attended Roma, which is, if you can get there, go there, because it's people of our size. And also that January 21st, I went to Port Colborne City Hall for the quarter revision regarding the skeleton drain. It was, I think, 6 minutes, maybe. So I rushed from Toronto there, but that's done. And also January 27th, we had the Drainage Advisory Committee, and the agenda can be found on our website. And if you look on our website, there's all kinds of drainage meetings coming up. And also on February 5th, I'll be attending the first Greater Niagara Circle Route meeting at the region. And also, what else do we have going on here? There's one other thing. Okay, I can't find it, but if I find it, I'll let y'all know. Oh, that was it. We went to the first, what is it? That's it. the Age-Friendly Advisory Committee, and that was January 17th. So there's lots of good ideas around the table and brainstorming. It was a great cross-section of residents in Wainfleet, and I don't know when our next meeting is, but again, it will be on our website.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none. Moving on to the adoption of our previous council minutes. Everybody's had a chance to read that. Are there any issues or comments, corrections, concerns? Okay, seeing none, those are adopted. And we're going to our public meeting now. So this public meeting is an application for zoning bylaw amendment Z01 2020W 21646 Geringer Road. The purpose of the meeting is to provide more information about the application and an opportunity for public input. No recommendations are provided at the public meeting, and Township Council will not be making any decision at this meeting. A recommendation report will be prepared by staff and presented at a subsequent meeting of Township Council following a full review of the application. As a member of the public, you are welcome to request to be notified of any future public or council meetings regarding this matter. Please provide your contact information on the sign-in sheet located at the back. It's on the table at the back there. And please be advised that the sign-in information will form part of the public record for these applications. And I'll now ask Sarah, the planner, to speak to this, please.
The subject property is located on the north side of Geringer Road between Highway 3 and Dixie Road. And as you said, is known municipally as 21646 Geringer Road. The property is approximately 18.4 hectares in size and currently being used for residential and agricultural purposes. So the property is designated as good general agricultural area under the regional official plan, agricultural area and fish habitat under the township's official plan, and is zoned agricultural A2 with a fish habitat overlay in our bylaw. The property was the subject of a surplus farm dwelling application, which was conditionally approved by the committee on January 15th. One of those conditions was the approval of a zoning bylaw amendment for Part 2 to prohibit any future dwellings on that parcel. And that is to satisfy provincial, regional, and township planning policy for surplus farm dwelling applications. So this application proposes to rezone Part 2 from the agricultural A2 zone to an A2-1 zone to prohibit dwellings, and an A2-68 zone, which recognizes the reduced lot area of 17.4 hectares, with the 1 hectare being allocated for Part 1 as part of the severance. In terms of notice, notice was given on December 23rd by mailing to property owners within 120 meters of the property, and we also posted a notice on the township's website. A public notice board was also installed at the property. So we circulated the application to various external agencies and township departments requesting review and comment. To date, we've received 2 comments. So Ministry of Transportation, they noted no objection to both the amendment and the severance, but did note that no future access to Part 2 will be given from Highway 3, so access must be from the municipal road. Niagara Region Planning and Development Services noted no objection, and they required that approval of the zoning amendment be a condition of the approval of the severance. So any written comments received after the public meeting will be included in the recommendation report.
Thank you. Are there any questions from council? Okay, seeing none, is there any comment or input from the gallery? If anybody here tonight would like to speak to that, please come forward to the microphone. Anybody in the gallery wish to speak to this? Okay, seeing nobody, to Sarah, what is our next step?
A recommendation report regarding the application. A full review of the application will be brought at the next council meeting. If you wish to be notified of the passing of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment or the refusal of the request to amend the zoning bylaw, you must make a written request to the clerk at the Township of Wainfleet. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submission to the township regarding the proposed amendment before the township gives or refuses to give approval to the application, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the township to the local planning appeal tribunal. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at the public meeting or make written submissions to the township regarding the proposed amendment before the approval authority gives or refuses to give approval to the application, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the local planning appeal tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so.
Thank you. And so if you wish to be notified of the decision of the Corporation of the Township of Wainfleet in respect to this proposed application, you must make a written request to the clerk of the Township of Wainfleet and quote the appropriate file number. Okay, that's that concluded. Moving on to delegations. We have no delegation this evening. And so we're going to go to staff reports normally, but I think Councillor Van Vliet wants to speak.
Yeah, I was just wondering if we could flip them and put the planning staff report before the fire report, as I think it's going to be extensive and people might want to leave.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I agree with that. Do we need a motion, or is everyone okay with changing that order? Okay, we'll make that change. Okay, this is the planning staff report, official plan amendment 02, a deferral of Chambers Corners. And again, I would look to our planner to speak to that, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this is the second report regarding the township-initiated official plan amendment. And the purpose of the amendment was to deal with lands that were left without a designation through the removal of some lands from our proposed hamlet boundaries through our last official plan exercise. So at the December 3rd council meeting, council approved a rural area designation for the lands adjacent to Wellandport and Ostrahan Corners, as well as part of 51250 Tunnicliffe Road. And so a draft bylaw to adopt that direction has been included as Appendix A to my staff report. I'll just note that the rural area designation for the lands adjacent to Wellandport and for part of 52150 Tunnicliffe Road are not consistent with provincial and regional planning policy. So at that same meeting, council deferred consideration of the lands adjacent to Chambers Corners, and that was pending further information regarding a possible industrial or commercial designation for these lands. And so this report addresses that deferral. I'll note that the owner of 52015 Regional Road 24 has requested that the lands be designated rural area, and that designation allows for some limited lot creation for residential purposes, subject to specific policy requirements. So in terms of a policy review, then the recommendation, that did not change from the original planning report, PSR 12 of 2019. So the lands adjacent to Chambers Corners are considered prime agricultural lands under the provincial policy statement and growth plan, and are designated as good general agricultural area under the regional official plan. So assigning an industrial area or a village commercial designation would not be consistent with these policies. So my recommendation stands that the designation assigned to these lands be agricultural area, and again, that's to be consistent with provincial and regional planning policy. Within the agricultural area designation, I will note that there are some opportunities for a variety of agricultural related uses and on-farm diversified uses which have a commercial or industrial component. So in my report, I give some examples of both. So produce storage and distribution center, farmers market, an agricultural research center, farm equipment repair shop, various home industries, agritourism uses such as bed and breakfasts, petting zoos, seasonal events, and retail uses such as antiques business, seed supplier or tax shops, as well as some cafes and small restaurants. So that leads to, that currently exists in the agricultural area policies of the township's official plan. So there are opportunities to establish some of those uses within a property designated agricultural area. We also have a policy in our official plan that speaks to opportunities to consider non-agricultural uses. And that's through a local official plan amendment and regional official plan amendment. And so I've provided a copy of that policy in the report, and it outlines the various justification and items that need to be considered through such a request. And a number of technical studies would be required to support that non-agricultural use. And what would happen is you would still have an agricultural area designation, but you would have a specific policy for that property. So we wouldn't change it to industrial or commercial. It would remain agricultural, but have a specific policy for that specific non-agricultural use. I'll step back a little bit in terms of the official plan amendment as a whole. Since the previous council meeting, I did have some discussions with the region regarding other options for considering the lands adjacent to the 3 hamlets that are part of this official plan amendment. So under the new growth plan, a new policy was introduced that allows for the minor adjustments to boundaries of rural settlement areas. And again, that's subject to specific policy requirements, but basically council or a private landowner can make a request to include lands within a hamlet boundary. And obviously appropriate justification would need to be made for that through supporting technical studies. So that is another option for council to consider. Basically, that would reestablish the proposed hamlet boundaries if we were to do that for the three hamlets that are under consideration now. So the lands that were removed from the Wellandport hamlet, if we made application to do that, we could re-include that within Wellandport. Same with Osterhong Corners. Instead of a rural, we could re-include that in with Osterhong Corners hamlet. But again, appropriate justification and technical studies would have to be done. And so in my report, I've estimated that those would cost anywhere from $35,000 to $50,000 to get those studies done to support an application to the region. So that's just one other option available to council when you're looking at this amendment. So I'm available for any questions.
Okay, thank you. So first, I'll read the recommendations, and then the planning staff report PSR 001-2020 be received, and that an agricultural area designation be approved for the reasons outlined in PSR 001-2020 and PSR 012-2019 for the following properties adjacent to the hamlet of Chambers Corners. Part of 52015 Regional Road 24, Concession 5, Lot 19, and part of 52017 Regional Road 24, Concession 5, Lot 19, and that the bylaw to adopt the land use designations for lands adjacent to the hamlets of Wellandport, Chambers Corners, and Osterhong Corners, and the property known municipally as 51250 Tunnicliffe Road be considered at the February 18th, 2020 council meeting. And now if I could have a mover and a seconder to put it on the floor for discussion, please. Moved by Councillor Cridlin, second by Councillor Van Vliet, and all in favor of putting on the floor for discussion? On the floor. And discussion. Any questions, comments? Councillor Cridlin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I like that we've taken a pause and looked at this again, and I want to thank staff for providing even more options and more background. Again, for me, it seems that there's a lot of options on the table, and would, for me now, just make your recommendation stronger. So I'm still comfortable supporting the staff's recommendation as presented. Look,
maybe there was a letter came from in a homeowner, but I have heard since that they've changed their mind and they would like it to go commercial or light industrial. I think we should do it, no offense to staff, but there was a report came out from the region. Every other municipality has a place to grow for business except for Wainfleet. You know, I think we we need to stand up for ourselves and try and get something going here. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And Councillor Gilmore.
Thank you, Mayor. This report doesn't change anything that we decided in December as far as the other three, just to clarify that. So that, we're just waiting to make a decision regarding the Chambers Corners to add that to the bylaw, to send it to the region to begin the process of either changing or appealing. I concur with Councillor McClellan regarding this property. The property owner has spoken to me. And I think that at some point we have to stand up and say, we need to do some things with some property that makes some sense and have a little bit of flexibility. I don't think that anything will probably happen if it does get changed in the foreseeable future, because it's a long process to bring small industrial and commercial here in the first place. It may never happen, but at least the option is there if somebody comes along. Right now, it would take, if somebody came along, it would take us years to find a home for them. And at that point, they'll go somewhere else. So I think that we're already going to be in a relatively lengthy process with the region regarding the decision we made on the other two. The one won't be a problem because the region supports what we did on Burnaby Road. I do have a question regarding Burnaby Road to the planner. Is the property owner requesting that the balance of the property also be changed to rural? Or is he content with what we did and how it was left and what the region is going to support?
So the property owner would like the balance of his property designated as rural area, but from my perspective, the balance of his property was not the subject of this official plan amendment. We were only dealing with the part of the property that was left without a designation. So part of his property, even under the proposed hamlet boundaries back when we were doing our official plan, was out of the hamlet and now has a designation of agricultural area. So we're only dealing with the part of the property that was removed from that proposed hamlet boundary. But he would like to see his entire property rural area.
Okay, I'll just continue. So, but we didn't address the other part of his property in our decision in December. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So it's strictly what they were agreed to. All right, well, that's fine. And just a comment regarding the other thing that you spelled out regarding minor rounding. To me, I think that just adds a lot more layer of bureaucracy to a lot of the decision, a lot of extra cost. And it's also new, and I don't think anybody else has done it, and I don't consider some of this to be either minor or rounding. So it's a great idea, except for the other layers that have to be added, and studies and this and that, and delays. So my view is that we make a decision. We've made a decision on the other two. That would be Wellandport and Town of Cliff Road, and that I would then move that we change this designation, attempt to change this designation to commercial industrial in Chambers Corners, and send the whole package to the region, and then we'll see where we're at. That's my motion.
Okay, so that's a motion by Councillor Gilmore. We need a seconder on that. Councillor Van Vliet.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I wasn't aware
What,
that.
just on the motion, no first, right? Discussion on the amendment. The motion is on, there we have a motion on the floor from Councillor Gilmore, right?
Well, if you want a further discussion, I'll just hold it. I'm happy to hold it.
Okay, we'll hold that then, and we'll have further discussion.
Thank you, Councillor Gilmore. I wasn't aware that the homeowner had changed his or her mind, because I don't see 42 acres of good farmland becoming industrial in any way. For me, I just didn't know that. If anybody wants to fill me in a little further on what had happened.
Yeah, initially, we received that email from the landowner there who stated that she was interested in it being rural, so with some development. I have not had a conversation with her, but a couple of the other councillors have, and she has decided that she is interested at looking at light industrial or commercial there. So that's been since that email came in. And just along that line too as well, I recognize that one of the most important things we need to do is to grow and grow smartly within Wainfleet and maintain our identity and everything, but we do need to start to do some development. I've been to the Niagara Industrial Association. I've talked to them about considering Wainfleet for some very light industry, but we have no land. We don't have any designation for anywhere to do that. So this is something that we are lacking, and if we hope to grow and grow responsibly, we do need to acquire some land or have some land zoned in an industrial light commercial. So that's my comment. Anybody else wish to comment? Councillor Cridland? Councillor Cridland?
Thank you, Mayor, through you. I think I'd just like to go back to the planner and then just revisit. When I listened to your report, I heard that there are still a lot of flexibility if it's left in agriculture. Things that are still yet right size perhaps for Wainfleet. Can you comment or maybe discuss the differences a little bit with what a light industrial is versus maybe the list or the intent within the agricultural designation, and is this just semantics? Thank you.
So to Councillor Cridland, so in an industrial area designation under the official plan, that's more of a manufacturing, warehousing, that type of use is defined as an industrial use. So just to go back to Councillor Gilmore's question or motion that he had put out, whether it's commercial or industrial. So you would have to pick one because we've got both categories available to us under our official plan. So we do have some lands designated village commercial and some lands designated industrial area. So I just want to throw that comment out for council's consideration, that when you're considering a designation for these properties, to pick village commercial or industrial area. So village commercial permits a variety of commercial uses, retail, store locations, but you're right, under the agricultural area policies for agricultural related uses and on-farm diversified uses, you can have some retail commercial components or even industrial components that are accessory and part of the agricultural operation. So if council remembers, last year we did a zoning amendment for an on-farm diversified use for the wedding venue. So that's more of a commercial recreational type use within a prime agricultural land. So we do allow that, but the scale and other factors have to be considered when doing that. So that property was over 40 hectares in size, and they were only allocating about 1 hectare to that particular commercial and retail use. So those opportunities do exist in an agricultural area designation, subject to different policies and guidelines.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know that Councillor Gilmore also then had a question, so perhaps he'd like to go next. I do have more questions.
Councillor McClellan?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yes.
Go ahead, Councillor McClellan.
Yes. It's hard just to go back and forth. My apologies. It's like I'd like to have a conversation about this because I'm worried about stepping off the agriculture, which we've had a study on, we've had a lot of information on, we've had layers of staff work. And for me, I'm not ready to consider industrial. Like, I can't move to that because we haven't even talked about it, what that means, what size that could be in the neighborhood, what kinds of issues industrial might be in that proximity to that corner, what kind of traffic it might put on that corner when we're thinking about other things in that neighborhood that are important to our community. So I don't have enough information to go from, okay, we're not going to do agricultural, then I need more information before I can do anything different than agricultural. We were going from rural to agricultural. I have a little bit more understanding what the scale of that is, what the scale of it could be. I'm not disagreeing with where this might go, but I don't have enough information now to be able to lift off from agricultural. So agriculture to me gives enough of a footprint, enough of a variety. It protects us from the scale. I'm happy with the list. I'm starting to ramble. Thank you for your listening.
Councillor McClellan.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, my only question to this, and this would be to the planner and maybe the CAO, if we were approving this and letting this go, is there any way to make sure people aren't just banking this land and nothing gets developed for 40 years and it doesn't do us any good? Is there any way to put a time limit on some of these developments or something like that? Because if we create the one in Osterhorns Corners and there's 14 house lots or whatever the number is, and he sits on it for another 25 years, that doesn't do our town any good. We need this development now. Our schools are empty. We need to bring some people in here, or we're gonna lose a lot more than we're thinking about. Is there any way to do that?
I'm currently not aware of a way of doing that, but I can certainly explore that, but I don't have any information that I can give to answer you this evening on that. I'm not aware of anything.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, neither am I off the top of my head. There are certain programs that municipalities can put in place with respect to community improvement areas where, certain incentives can be encouraged, for example, for facade improvements or to bring certain types of development into the area. But we don't have any community improvement plans in place in Wainfleet at the moment. So even that route would be a long ways out. So, sorry.
Okay, Councillor McClellan again.
One other question. I know Councilor Cridlin's worried about what's gonna come in that, but anybody that's coming into town if it's zoned industrial or commercial, they have to come before the planner and the towns and get site plan approval for what they're putting in there. So we do have a lot of control that comes in there. So, your guy can't just come in and say, I'm gonna put a recycling plant in here. It just won't happen. The planner has the controls, the town has the controls on that. So there is, although the zoning changes, there is a whole bunch of steps they have to go through to get anywhere, and the town has the control.
Any comment from that to that, Sarah?
So yes, commercial and industrial uses are subject to site plan control. So prior to issuing a building permit, depending on the scale of it, which if it's greater for new vacant lands, it would have to come before council. So we would present what's being proposed for the property, and a site plan agreement would be required to be authorized by council. So yeah, we do have site plan controls in place for industrial and commercial uses.
Okay, any other comments? Councillor Gilmore, you were going to make a motion or further comment?
Well, yeah, thanks, Mayor. I need to tidy up my motion a bit based on the comments from the planner. So I think without the ability to consult at the moment with the landowner, in my sense would be that that probably village commercial would be the most logical potential change to make there. Now, and just to Councillor Van Vliet's comment about the size and everything, if it gets changed, several things will probably happen, including nothing for a long, long time. So it'll still be farmed maybe in perpetuity. It's just that it would be available if something in 15 or 20 years comes along that fits there. So my concern is that I stated earlier is that if something comes along, the curve is far too long to get around to get anything done before people get tired and go somewhere else. And So that's the issue. If we get the designation change, it means, in no way means that the land won't be farmed for many, many years. A classic example would be the lot that we now joined with the property that we bought for the fire hall, which sat vacant, as you're well aware, for 30, 35 years as commercial property, and actually nothing ever happened to it. So maybe that, maybe that sort of defeats what we're trying to do at the moment, but we don't know what's going to happen down the road. So I'll tidy up my motion to specify village commercial, because if I have to choose between that and industrial, to me that makes the most sense. That's my sense. If it gets seconded and passes, we'll go. If not, we'll do something different.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor from Councillor Gilmore to amend that to village commercial. And do we have a seconder for that? Councillor McClellan seconds it. So any further discussion on that? Councillor Cridlin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Then on clarifying what we could learn in the next few minutes of what village commercial is incremental to agriculture, that would just help with my decision. Thank you.
Sorry, so just to clarify, you want to know?
Sorry, Sarah. So we're moving off of agriculture to, I think you said, was it village commercial? A different zoning, so just so that I can be a little bit clearer. And again, I'm happy knowing what's in the commercial that you've explained in your report, but then could you briefly describe how it changes, for the community if we go the route of Councillor Gilmore's?
In terms of permitted uses within a village commercial designation, you've got retail stores, personal services, food markets, automotive, machinery and farm implement sales and service, hardware and farm supply sales, business and professional offices, restaurants, hotels, motels, theaters, clubs or halls, places of amusement or recreation, and then some secondary residential uses associated with the commercial uses are permitted.
Okay, thank you. So the motion is on the floor. It's been seconded. Any other discussion on that motion? This is just for the the change, the amendment. Councillor McClellan.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, just a question to the planner. So we just have village commercial and then we go right to industrial. There's nothing in between?
We also have tourist commercial, which we've designated some properties along the lakeshore that have restaurants, and then resort recreational commercial. So those are the other two commercial, which again, resort recreational is like your golf courses. So all of our golf courses are designated that. And tourist is more service oriented, like restaurants and service shops. So village commercial provides the most diverse use of commercial uses.
Okay, on the amendment, Councillor Van Vliet.
For you, Mr. Mayor, to Sarah. If we did, I'm sorry, what do we do? Commercial?
Village commercial.
Village commercial. Can people build houses?
Only as an accessory to a commercial use.
Okay, and Councillor Cridlin.
Through you, Mayor, thank you. So again, because we are going, at the moment, proposed contrary to staff's recommendation, this minor change now that I'm seeing village commercial versus agriculture, in terms of what can be in the basket, puts us in a sort of a contrary situation to the region. So if we choose agriculture, it's close and it's efficient and it's a different process likely. versus now changing it from what the staff's recommended. Where now, it doesn't matter how we change it, we're in that other process. Is that correct?
So, if council chooses a village commercial or industrial, whatever the decision is on the lands adjacent to Chambers Corners, anything other than agricultural area wouldn't be supported by the region. So then you're opening yourself up to a potential appeal. And again, that's because of the layers of provincial policy direction and, all of us trying to be consistent with the upper tier, so.
Okay, last call for any final comments on this. So on the amendment to change it to village commercial, we have a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. All in favor? Opposed? And that is carried. And that's the amendment. And now on the entire planning staff report, have a mover and seconder, please. Just as amended, then we vote on it as amended. All in favor? And opposed? And that is carried. Okay, the next item of business is a memo, and it's as per council's procedure bylaw, by way of resolution, and from time to time shall appoint a deputy mayor who shall be a member and who shall act in place of the mayor when the mayor is absent or refuses to act or the office is vacant, and while so acting, such deputy mayor shall have all the powers and duties of the mayor. In January 2019, council passed a bylaw appointing Councillor Gilmore as the deputy mayor for the year 2019. That term has expired, and so as such, council needs to pass a resolution appointing a deputy mayor for 2020. And suggestions, I know I've had some conversations, and I know Councillor Van Vliet is interested in occupying this position for a year. Any discussion on that? Councillor Cridland?
Could I make a motion that we move that then, please?
Great, thank you. Seconder, Councillor McClellan, and all in favor of that? And that is carried. Congratulations, Councillor Van Vliet. Okay, bylaws enforcement staff report, and I'll look to our HR Lee if you have anything to speak to that. It's pretty straightforward.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this report is intended simply as an update for council, just to provide that quarterly statistical report and keep council informed as to the status of bylaw enforcement. Okay,
thank you. So recommendation that the bylaw enforcement staff report BSR 001-2020 respecting the 2019 fourth quarter statistical report be received. And mover seconder, Councillor Van Cridland and Councillor Van Vliet, all in questions, discussion? Go ahead, Councillor Cridland.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's just that it's a new, this is the first time we've seen the amps, the non-amps. And if I could just ask you just to provide what you might have top of mind on that, it looks like there's 30 items in there. And if we get that at the next quarter, that's fine too. Just, I think it's a good news story, but it's definitely new news, so thank you.
Certainly, thank you, Councillor. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So that section at the bottom, the non-parking amps, council has take a note that the current year there are 30 notices there, as opposed to the 0 the previous year. The previous year, of course, council was still in the process of considering AMPS, and we were in the process of implementing to supplement our enforcement and give us some additional tools. So once the system was in place, that resulted in a series of penalty notices being issued, 30 in all. Basically, that has changed the face of the way that we've been doing enforcing. The majority of those have been from grow ops, some obstruction of inspections, and some animals at large charges as well. So it's all in all, it's been a different approach, and I think a successful one in maintaining the standards of the community as council has dictated.
Thank you. Any other questions on that? Okay, we have a mover and a seconder, so all in favor? And that is carried. Okay, we're moving into the fire portion here this evening, which we anticipate will be a little bit of length to it. So we need a recess if anybody needs to leave, because we're expecting this to take a little bit of time. So if anybody wants to leave now, we'll take a 2-minute recess. If not, we'll carry on. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody wanting to leave, so we'll move right into Fire Service Report 001-2020, 2019 fourth quarter fire and emergency services, and we'll look to the chief to speak to that, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. So this is the fourth quarter fire and emergency services report review, just kind of highlighting the events and actions of the fire service. Our recruitments began in September and continued through the fourth quarter. And as a result of that, we sent out 7 conditional offers for probationary firefighters. And they have begun their training in partnership with Fort Erie Fire as of the beginning of January this year. So by the end of June, hopefully we'll have, or the end of June, we should have 7 firefighters hit the trucks and add to our personnel. Looking to public education, there was a couple of, we ran 6 events in the fourth quarter. Some of the key messaging, home escape planning, smoke and carbon monoxide alarm requirements, farm and seasonal safety, emergency preparedness, and then for the kids, safety around large vehicles, so farm equipment, plows, fire trucks, that kind of thing. There was 1 fire inspection as a result of a post-incident. We responded to a call while we were there. We noticed that there was some potentially fire and life safety concerns, so we went back and conducted an inspection. The property owner was in fact compliant, but there were some recommendations that we made that could make the tenants a little bit safer. But in the end, there was no charges for or orders issued. With regards to emergency responses, you can see that at our year end, we ended up with a 211 for the year. That's pretty well right on par with our year-to-year stats, and that is including the storm response, where we had 9 to 10 dispatch calls in that 24-hour period. So, but we're still within our norms. There wasn't any high influx there. As reported in the third quarter, we did have our annual pump testing done, which resulted in some failures of our apparatus. All of those repairs have been completed except in Squad 1. Squad 1, when it was purchased, was never rated as a triple class or a triple combination pump. So no, in order to be recognized for insurance pump purposes, a pumper must have at least a minimum 750 gallon a minute pump. That truck was purchased with a 420 gallon a minute pump. So when we did the pump test and it failed, we're looking at a truck that's 15 years old that'll never have a pump rated for insurance purposes, and we were looking at possibly $30,000 to fix this truck and still not have it recognized at the end of all the work. So we've removed it from service as an interior firefighting pumper. It's still a great initial attack apparatus. We can use it for trash fires, grass fires, other emergency responses, but I will not send my firefighters into a burning home with that as the first due pump. And my firefighters know that. So that said, we are now operating 3 pumpers with no reserve from 4 stations. So that kind of ties back to the master fire plan that was done in 2013, where Station 1 or Winger's area is divided, and Station 4 and Station 2 become the first due apparatus for structural fires. Like I said, the squad, we're going to keep it until we're going to run it till its end. But it is my recommendation that we do not buy another truck of that type because it serves the community no purpose. Engine 2 also had some extensive repairs done to it. It's a 1999 International. It too failed its pump, and during its entire lifespan had never had any preventative maintenance done to the pump. And when we did the testing, the only thing that we could do to it was rebuild the interior components of the pump. That was about $20,000 that we had to do this year, but that will allow us to run that pump right as a reserve pump until 2025 to 2030, depending on how nice we are to the truck. But with that said, that now means that truck is beyond the 20-year lifespan. It's 21 years old now. So it was slated to be replaced in 2019. That didn't happen because we don't have a facility to put a new truck into. So my recommendation is that we start to think, mid-2020, early 2021, that we start the process of procuring a new truck. Trucks typically take about a year to build. So by the time the new station's built, we should have a new truck planned for that haul. Obviously, it won't affect the 2020 budget, but certainly have it planned for 2021, 2022. Other equipment work that we had done, we had our annual SCBAs flow tested. Of those, we had several repairs that needed to be done. Again, all of our SCBAs, so that's our breathing apparatus. They're antiquated. In 2017, we purchased multiple units from West Lincoln as used apparatus. They were 15 years old at the time when they were purchased 3 years ago, and they're now starting to fail. So we're at a point where we're cannibalizing what we have just for parts to keep what we have going. We're at a point where all of our trucks and all of our stations have the required SCBA. We are still operating, but we're getting to that point where we seriously need to, in 2017, the used packs was a stopgap measure to buy us time to replace them. And so there is some other departments that are looking at purchasing in 2020, and it may be a good time to do a joint purchase with other municipalities if that's available to us. And knowing that we're not looking at an apparatus like a fire truck purchase, maybe now's the time that we look at seriously looking at our SCBAs. There was a reserve fund created in 2019 to begin the process for SCBA replacement. If we continue that fund in 2020, we should be able to pull from that, and that will certainly, it won't cover it, but it'll certainly offset the impact that replacement project would involve. Moving beyond equipment and operations into training, regular Monday training carries a variety of topics. We did have 7 members complete NFPA 1072, so that's our hazardous materials awareness operations and mission specific. I can't remember the number of firefighters that we now have trained to that standard, but that is in compliance with our levels of service as outlined in the ENR bylaw. And then we also had several other members attend various other seminars and workshops, including 14 when we hosted the livestock rescue course that was hosted here in Wainfleet. And some of the priorities coming into early 2020, obviously we're going to continue with our recruit training program in partnership with Fort Erie, our other ongoing training initiatives in-house, and the fire station project. So certainly if there's any questions.
Thank you for that, Chief. And I'll just read the recommendation first, and then we'll go to questions. The recommendation is that the Fire Staff Report 001-2020 respecting 2019 fourth quarter fire and emergency services review be received for information. And I have a mover and seconder to put that on the floor. Councillor Gilmore, Councillor McClellan, and discussion, please. Councillor Gilmore.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Morgan, for the report. Just a quick question, comment regarding the emergency responses. When you look at the motor vehicle collisions, if you take out all the incidents on Kings Highways, regional roads, the only other place we had any problem was concession 6. So I just wonder if that's a coincidence or if we have a problem on concession 6.
To my knowledge, I think that's a coincidence. I didn't even notice that. Good catch. You're right. And to be honest, a lot of the highway calls that we respond to, we do invoice the MTO for. So that is a cost recovery. So we don't really lose responding to those. The regional roads, that's a different story. But yeah, I didn't even notice that it's only concession 6. I'll have to look deeper into that.
I just want to make sure that there's, maybe it's being used as a drag strip or something goofy back there. I don't live far from there. It's not a through road. I'm surprised that there's not more incidents on Wilford, which is a through road. And concession 6 is sort of it's straight for a while, but then it doesn't end anywhere. You have to make a jog. So it's likely just coincidence, but it's ironic that it's the only township road that we had any MVAs on. Aside from our non-owned roads. So that's all.
Okay, thank you for that. Any other comments? Councillor McClellan.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. On all this, and it's kind of maybe a little bit off topic, but we need, Chief Morgan mentioned that there was fire trucks that needed to be replaced coming up. There's a fire hall we all know about. There's probably 1 or 2 more that are coming our way. I'm just wondering if we can get a 5-year forecast or a 10-year forecast of what these costs are going to be, so that maybe we can start putting more money in the budget to say, okay, we have it here. So 10 years out, chances are none of us are here, but we've done our work for the next group to come along, and there's some money so that they don't land in here and there's no funds available. Because we also have $19 million worth of bridges, I think, that we got to look at as well. So we got a lot of money to spend in the next 10 years.
Yeah, that point is taken. I'll look to the chief to speak to that in our asset management plan.
Yeah, so if I may, in 2019, we started that process. It was kind of phase 1 building. That's why we saw the increase we did, was building that base. 2020 will be part 2 of that plan. And certainly that will include the reserve forecasting. That includes the annual capital replacements of PPE and equipment. Those are things that was typically fluctuating, and now that we've taken stock of all of our assets and have a 10-year replacement or 20-year replacement plan, that's something that we can budget for annually and kind of get that flat line for.
Go ahead, Councillor McClellan, and I'll look to the CAO after that.
So that's not really what I'm looking for. I'd like to have, it's going to be $6 million or $8 million or $22 million, so we know roughly what we're looking at. So we have, it's easy to say, yeah, we'll put this much in or this much in, but fire halls are big expenses, fire trucks are large expenses. We need to know what we should be putting in there. And no offense, it's just, I'm not picking on you, I just need to know this.
No, that's just good planning. And I'll look to the CAO for comment, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and just further to that, in 2019, the township actually put the finishing touches on a new asset management program, which we are looking at presenting in depth and detail to council. Hopefully, if time permits, before you delve into your budget deliberations. We are cutting it tight, but we do have a consulting firm that was retained with the assistance of some grant monies that the township received. And we have a fairly robust system now, which can help provide us that sort of building framework, what we need to look at over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. So we are working on pulling that together and getting it before you without delay.
And that is one thing as well that I'm looking at is long-term planning all the way. I think that's a very vital part of our township is to plan 20, 30 years down the road. How do we pay for things as things, end of life, bridges, roads, all that sort of thing. So we do have those conversations fairly often, and it is definitely something we're aware of and are working on. So, okay, any other discussion on that, Councillor Quidlin?
Thank you. It's just changing over back to the report in a different part of the report. Just really, this report captures our our storm event, and I was also interested to see that basically the other category is still kind of normal. Could you just comment whether then that storm just sort of kind of fits in our normal run, like we came in at that 211, or if there's something we need to be thinking about in that other category as if we see more of these kinds of events?
Yeah, that storm was certainly kind of a one-off. We have had more storms since that time, but those storms didn't really require a fire or emergency response. So is it more of a blip in the 2019 map? I think so. But as we're all aware, these things are occurring more and more common. And so we'll have to monitor it, and maybe it becomes a trend where the other column that you see there, that's that public hazards and flooding and power lines, we may see a trend where that becomes a little more predominant in our responses, just based on the storms we may see. But right now, it's only a blip.
Okay, any other discussion, comments? Okay, seeing none, motion is on the floor, and so it's been moved and seconded. So all in favor of receiving this report? And that is carried. Okay, we'll move to 002-2020 Fire Service Report. Existing structures, and I'll look to it's a lengthy document. I'll look to the chief to begin that, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this report is really just to provide staff the direction into the disposal of the existing dwelling that's on the property, where the potential fire hall is to go, and also direction to staff whether we are to repurpose or dispose of the existing barn that's also on that property. With regards to the house, the existing dwelling, as we know, it didn't sell, and so we've since removed it from the market. We have choices: either it can be demolished and disposed of by a contractor in one kind of fell swoop, or we can have the other option that I would like to see happen. Is that we go through, we remove all non-Class A combustibles, so all the vinyl siding and asphalt shingles, copper insulation, leaving us with a shell that we could actually do live fire training in. Live fire training is one of those things that doesn't occur regularly. They're unique in the fact that they provide opportunities, the experience of live fire training that's not in a fixed prop. Typically when we go to a fire tower, you can pretty well count the paint on the bricks and okay, I'm at this corner and I can turn, like you've got the maze memorized. The benefit to an acquired structure like that is it's different. You get to see the fire growth in an actual house, not a controlled setting. It is still controlled and it's still very safe. I'm not going to go, but it's a different type of live fire setting. It's an opportunity for us to extend this out to other training groups if they want to come and participate. We do have some other groups, the Ontario Municipal Fire Prevention Officers Association, as well as the Fire and Life Safety Educators. They would like to come and kind of record, provide footage of the fire for both fire escape planning, public education, but also in post-fire investigations, coming in, taking a look at the cause and origin of those fires. Obviously, once the burn's done, we will still have to dispose of the debris in the foundation and everything. So it's a little more lengthy than just having a contractor come in. But regardless of the demolition type that occurs, we're still going to have to inspect for asbestos and make sure that it's cleaned and abated properly, regardless of which way we go. So that's the purpose of my discussion about the house. The second piece is with regards to the barn. The barn is currently 2 stories and is 125 feet long. In the proposed plan is to reduce it to 90 feet. The front 50 feet would be to take the second floor out, so we would have a full height, 50 feet deep. The remaining 40 feet would keep the second floor, and that second floor is where we would do firefighter survival training in it. Appendix C is that lengthy kind of PowerPoint presentation. That's kind of a plan of what the concept would look like in the second floor of the barn. Certainly that's what we're going to build right now. It's just down the road, that's our mindset, is it's a modular firefighter survival training kind of platform that we can build up in that second floor. The front half that's turned into storage, and it would be open for all municipal uses, not just the fire service. Regardless of what we do at the fire station, the barn is either going to have to be demolished completely or reduced in size just to fit the station on the lot, given the depth of the lot. So that's why I'm coming today and asking council and direction on what we want to do with the house and the barn.
Okay, thank you. Recommendation from staff, the fire staff report FSR 002-2020, respecting joint emergency services facility project update, existing structures be received, and that staff be directed to dispose of the existing dwelling located on the township property at 42143 Highway 3, and that staff be directed to repurpose and renovate the existing barn for the purpose of shared storage and training areas. I have a mover and a seconder for that, please. Put it on the floor. Councillor Gilmore, seconder. Councillor Van Vliet, and discussion, please. Councillor Cridler, go ahead.
I think we're a race to perhaps, thank you, Mayor, race to maybe split these somehow, so we could perhaps deal with one and then deal with the other one. However, the clerk would have us do that. So I think that's an amendment.
Okay, we'll do the first one first.
Yep.
Obviously, it makes sense. Go ahead.
So thank you. Then I'll just continue. So over, perhaps to the chief then, on the first option, how long would it take then to actually dismantle and get the contractor and have it taken out? So is that a week? Is that 2 weeks to have that demolished?
Like just to have a contractor come in?
If the decision was option one, how long would that take?
3 days.
So nothing's in our way of
No.
executing that
No, it's
if the approval was option one?
That's right, yeah.
Okay, I'll just leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Councillor Van Vliet.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the chief. For option one, if we have a contractor come in, I'm just going to throw a name out there, like if we have Triple M or something like that come in, they would take all the copper, all the metal, everything, repurpose it and sell it and make the money off it, wouldn't they? As long as us paying them as well to take it all down.
Option one, they come in with an excavator, smash it, throw it in a dumpster, and it's gone.
So they don't repurpose anything?
No.
Oh, thanks.
Councillor McClellan.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and you guys all know this, I've brought it up a number of times, my biggest fear is if we burn this, one, the optics aren't good with global warming and us trying to do this. Two is when we burn it and we have the water that runs off of it. I know in the past there's been farmers got charged tens of thousands of dollars to clean up their properties from the mixture of the chemicals and the water that runs out onto it, right? So there's 2 or 3 of them in town here that it happened to. So my question is, if we don't take everything out of it that can do anything, are we setting ourselves up for a remediation of a site to get it clean enough so that we can build on it? Because you have to do that, right? So I just worry about it. It's a great idea, but I just have a lot of concerns about it financially.
Okay, thank you. Look to the chief. I know you've done some more research on that in regards to costs. And
Yeah, I mean, with regards to burning the house, I mean, it's a lot easier just hire a contractor, come in and take it down. It's in a matter of a week, it's gone, and we've got a land that's ready to build on. No denying that. This option 2 was just, if we've got this building here, it's an opportunity to get more use out of it. I'm really impartial either way. I mean, I want to see the thing gone so we can start building. So, I mean, I'd like to train in it, but if it's council's wish not to, then we don't need to.
Any other discussion? Councillor Cridlin?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. And I might add that, again, things have been delayed because of how we've chosen to try to get some value out of the house sale and the time's taken for that. And so whatever training that we might benefit from, that again puts things out. So I, for other reasons, connecting this now to our timeline, I think there's some anxiousness to get going and see it down versus delaying it perhaps for the planned training. And maybe there would be another building at a future time that's not connected to our plan, like connected timeline-wise. If there's a weather event or if anything else takes us off of a planned date, then we have to do some other kind of decisioning. So I know we're trying to do the right thing and maximize this property, and I appreciate all the effort. I think I would tend to agree with Councillor McClellan on this, and think it's perhaps just go with option 1.
Okay, thank you. So any other no comments back on that? So I think we're going to have to look at choosing which one of these options. We've had discussion on this. Anybody wish to make a motion? One of the options, which option they would prefer? Councillor Van Vliet?
I would like to make the motion to go with option 2. I think it's a unique training exercise for our firefighters that doesn't come along often. And the other interested, didn't you say there's other interested parties that would join?
Yes.
In the training process? I think it's so, might be a one-time exercise for our firefighters.
Okay, and so option 2, just to be clear, it's relevant to the house only, and that staff be directed, and that staff be directed to dispose of it in regards to option 2 by using it as a training burning. So, have a seconder on that? Councillor Gilmore. Any further discussion? Councillor Gilmore.
Thank you, Mayor. I've been conflicted about the best thing to do versus the easy way versus the training. I think that we're not in a super hurry. The clerk is probably going to rule me out of order, but I think it wouldn't hurt us to defer this till the February 18 meeting. Now that this option has been, made public, people know what we might be thinking about. We'll have a chance to hear. I know that's out of order, so yeah. So maybe I'll look to Councillor Van Vliet to withdraw her motion, and then I'll bring up my idea to defer it formally.
Councillor Van Vliet.
Yeah, I'll do that for you.
Okay, that motion is withdrawn. I need a seconder to do that. Councillor Cridland. Okay.
Okay, so now with regards to the existing structure, I would like to defer the decision till the February 18 meeting.
Okay, and I need a seconder for that, Councillor McClellan, and it is deferred. We have to vote. And we vote on that. So all in favor of deferring it? And we'll defer it. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the second part, which is the barn. The staff be directed to repurpose and renovate the existing barn for the purposes of shared storage and training areas. Discussion, please. Is that Mover and a seconder, Councillor Gilmore, Councillor McClellan, and discussion. Okay, Councillor Gilmore.
Thanks, Mayor. I would move that we go with option 2.
Okay, seconder on that, Councillor Van Vliet. Discussion? Councillor Quidlin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one question, because I don't know how this stuff all times out. So if we support option 2, are we sure that it's in the right place on the property for our dream fire hall? So we haven't landed the fire hall site plan. I don't exactly know the order, but by approving 2, it stays there.
Yes.
And we are certain that that doesn't impact negatively on our dream investment.
Well, it stays, but once the site plan's approved, or presented and then approved, I mean, the barn will be in that site plan. So I mean, if the barn needs to get cut, it gets cut. I mean, if it's the whole thing's got to go because of the site plan, that's fine. But at least then we know that council's willing to go ahead and renovate it. So as soon as I know what the site plan is, we can get that barn cut and get prepared for the construction of the fire hall. Does that kind of make sense?
Thank you. I think of course it makes sense. It's just I haven't got it yet. So as long as the barn where it isn't a problem, so what you described was if we could do the site plan, we find we want to take off another 30 feet or 20 feet, I don't know what it is, so that you get the fire hall that you want. Yes. So approving it doesn't mean you have to do it.
That's correct.
Put it that way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they've been looking at the whole thing as a whole package, so. Any other discussion on option 2? It's moved, seconded. See no other discussion. All in favor? That is approved. And we need a mover and a seconder motion. All right, I'm getting schooled here. We have to vote on the amendment as the motion as amended. Mover on that, please. All in favor? That's carried. Okay, and now we're going to move on to Fire Service Report 003-2020, the Spatial Needs Assessment, and I'll ask the Chief to provide a brief overview of his report again.
Okay, so in order to determine the spatial requirements for the new station, many factors had to be taken into consideration. The purpose of this report is to provide council that information into the needs and the requirements of the station project that address both the current gaps and the requirements that were faced, and hopefully position the township and its emergency services for long-term sustainability. In December, staff developed a survey that was provided to both council and fire service personnel in an attempt to communicate the needs and expectations of the fire station. Though the results of those surveys are shown in appendices B and C, and they indicate that firefighter health and wellness, long-term planning, multi-purpose for municipal use, energy-efficient, cost-effective construction were all priorities for council and the fire personnel. Following that, we reviewed, following the review of the surveys, we also compared that with the recommendations of the Master Fire Plan that was done in 2013 and the Emergency Services Operational Review that was done in 2016. We also looked at some of the staff reports that had been completed through 2015 to 2017 with regards to the satellite stations and their needs that was reported at that time. We also looked at the Ministry of Labor orders from when the inspectors came in 2015-2016. Those can be found in appendices K and L. The Ministry of Labor held off on a lot of the orders because at the time, the council that day said that they were going to build a new hall and that would address a lot of the Ministry of Labor concerns. That was 5 years ago. We also looked at some of the various guides and industry best practices. So Fire and Rescue EMS Design Handbook is one of them. That's Appendix D. The Office of the Fire Marshal for Ontario, they have a planning kind of handbook or a guide. That's Appendix E. We use that one. There's also a fire station design checklist, which I've gone through, and line by line in Appendix F showed how this station addresses all of the items in that checklist. And then Appendix G is a whole building design for fire stations, and so that takes a look at how the building should be designed and how it flows and how the workspaces kind of work together. Once all that information was collected, we took kind of the spatial needs based on the recommendations and applied that to a workbook in Appendix I, and that was to determine the occupancy ratings based on the Ontario Building Code and what they determine is the occupancy ratings for, the square meters per person for that intended workspace. The requirements of all of those kind of spaces are kind of break out as follows. With regards to the apparatus bays, we had to take in the entire township into consideration. So knowing that this is going to kind of be the central station, we know that there's going to be a frontline pumper, a frontline tanker. We operate our rescue because we do our auto extrication, like we do our rescue services. But right now the fire department doesn't have a reserve pump. So if the pumper from Station 4 is out of service for an extended period of time, we don't have a backup truck. So that haul is essentially blacked out during that time. So typically you want to have a reserve pump that you can just send up there and is ready to go, but it's always kind of housed at a central location. So you need those 4 kind of frontline bays. We have a UTV that's sitting in a public works bay that, in the event that we need it from a fire perspective, we got to go to the public works building, get in and get it. And then the final bay, the 6th bay, was kind of that last bay reserved for growth. If we're going to be building this building for 70 years, have a bay that's ready for growth. I mean, if we add another utility vehicle or another truck or another tanker, then it's there for growth. With that said, the master fire plan did recommend 4 double deep, which is 8 bays. I think that's way too much, and that's why in this recommendation, I'm only recommending 6 bays. With regards to the SCBA filling room, the Ministry of Labor, when they did their inspections, and following us, Canada Standards Association, Standard Z 94.4, and also the Section 21 guidance notes, they require as part of your respiratory protection program that all clean and dirty workspaces be kept separate. So clean and dirty mean, from diesel particulate, from exhaust fumes, from the products of combustion, both from fire-related as well as the apparatus-related. So that is why, like right now, our compressor and filling station's right in the back of the truck bay in Station 2. And in 2015, 2016, there was a building assessment done on all of the buildings, and at that time, we were supposed to have put in NO2, CO sensors and exhaust extractors in all the stations, and that hasn't been done. So this new building addresses that gap. And includes an actual clean workspace for the filling and maintenance and clean and care use of our respiratory protection. Same with bunker gear storage. Again, the Ministry of Labor orders, the inspection orders that was released, we have clean bunker gear that we're putting in an apparatus bay and then having our diesel trucks blow diesel particulate all over our clean gear. So this proposed station has clean space that we can actually decontaminate our gear when we come back from a fire, clean it, dry it, put it back in service in a clean way, so that way we're not getting back into dirty gear, back into the cancer-causing chemicals, and going back out, or we're not bringing those chemicals home to our families. Understanding that when we're out in the apparatus bay and we're in that dirty workspace, it's sometimes impractical to have to completely dress down and decon to go to the washroom. So it includes a washroom in the truck bay, so you don't have to do all of that work. Equipment and maintenance, right now there's no workbenches or tool space to do any maintenance on our equipment. So it includes space for that. It includes space, what I would call dirty equipment storage, so places for hose and nozzles and all the extra equipment that you would use for suppression purposes. So we're not talking clean like public education material stuff that I'm going to hand out to kids. It's more the working tool storage piece. So that's been included. Our EOC training room, the Emergency Management Civil Protections Act, they require that all municipalities have a primary emergency operations center and an alternate. Currently, the room we're sitting in right now is our primary, and the alternate's the community center. In the event of a declared emergency in this area, both of them are impacted. If we have pneumonia leak at the arena, these are both of our EOCs are in the evacuation area. So that kind of renders us, inoperable. Council chambers we've set it up and it's tight. It's not the greatest room to be operating out of. And nor is the community center, because that's also designated as our reception center and shelter. So it's pretty hard to manage an emergency when you have evacuees walking in on us. So that's the intent there is, that the EOC training center, and that was identified in the master fire plan, and again, in even some of the station reviews, that the other smaller satellite stations would be alternates again. It would be one of those multi-purpose rooms. We would use it for training, and so it's got to be sized accordingly to be operated as both an EOC, but also as a classroom for instructional purposes. So we look at our ENR. We know that we have approximately 50 to 70 on the roster. We need to have a classroom that can fit 50 to 60 for that purpose. Certainly, you could put a movable partition so you could break out and do smaller rooms if needed. But it's another room for municipal purposes that can be used. As a result of the survey, right now our association, we do have monthly meetings. They meet, they do meals, they do their meetings together. And so that's where a carryover of the association room, standby room, lunchroom, kitchen area all ties in. Certainly if we're in a long, ongoing emergency operations center, we're there for a day, 2, 3 days, we're going to want a spot to sit down, have lunch, prepare, get our meals ready. So that's included in it. The meeting and breakout room, or a boardroom, if you will. If we're in a long, ongoing operation and the command staff need to take a step aside, or I need to do a debrief with council or the command staff, that's that breakout room, that's that piece there. We also do monthly officers meetings, joint health and safety committee meetings. That would be the meeting room for those committees. I've included office and admin space. Currently, the fire chief, the deputy fire chief, and the admin, we all work out of the township office. And our part-time training officer and our FPO, they really don't have dedicated workspace anywhere. They either work at a table over at the office or over at Station 2, or they work out of their home. So the intent of this is we have the staff that are doing the tasks now, and they're not provided the workspace to do it. So this new station addresses that and also sets us up in the future. So if we ever get to that point where we actually have to have staff to fill those, the workspaces are there and ready for them. Similar to the station officers, if they're doing their post-call paperwork, they're sitting at a table. If you're at Station 1, it happens to be the desk is next to the toilet. So it's not really a conducive workspace to do your duties. The benefit to that, and if we look at the office space, like I said, the myself and the deputy and the admin, we work here. If we don't, one of the things is if we don't move the offices to that space, there are spatial constraints in this building too, and that all ties. And so the benefit of moving kind of the fire staff out is that it does provide room for the municipal office to address some of its accessibility issues that may come up in the future with regards to accessible washrooms for staff and public. It kind of builds a little bit of flexibility for the municipality going forward. And with regards to showers and washrooms, the Ministry of Labor is very clear that under cancer prevention, that we get back from a fire, we shower, we clean ourselves up, we don't take those contaminants home, we don't wear them as we go out. And so the size of the showers and washrooms that are proposed isn't for our staffing now, but it's also based on the occupancy rating of the training room as if it was a fully occupied classroom or an EOC. So that's why there's so many toilets and urinals that there is, and the showers. Lockers and change restrooms. Obviously, each firefighter should be provided with space to store their clean clothes, their backup gear, or whatever it is. And as also part of the survey, a space for rest and rehabilitation. We talk about the Halloween storm. And we're moving to that model now. Certainly, if it's a bad weather event, we've got freezing rain out, and we're running multiple calls. I don't send my guys home and have them rush out every time. We end up just staying at the station. Right now, we don't have the facilities for them to stay, so they're literally sitting on the tailboard of the truck waiting, and it's not really a great workspace. And so the intent of this is to address those gaps. Similar with the wellness room, the Ministry of Labor does require that the fire department have a wellness plan in place. I know some municipalities, they give their firefighters a gym membership. That doesn't really play well for us. It means that we're sending all of our firefighters to Welland and Port Colborne to go work out. So part of this plan here is that above the bunker gear room, we can reuse that floor space by creating a closed-in mezzanine and creating a wellness room up there. I've done it in a previous fire station build that I did. We had all the gear donated, and we just kind of made our own gym above the area that was just wasted attic space, if you will, and it worked out well that the firefighters had a kind of a wellness room that they could use for themselves. And what we ended up doing is we opened it up to all municipal staff, and that kind of addresses some of the concerns that I know municipal staff have had. You know, certainly if they want to go use a treadmill, then they can go up there in January and walk. And it wouldn't impact the footprint of the overall building. The mechanical room, if you look at the concept plan, typically what you want to do with your mechanical rooms, kind of center it in the building, keep your runs for utilities equal throughout. You want to kind of keep it on an external wall, so it's, if you need easy access for service and maintenance, so that's included. And then clean storage and standard laundry services. So we do have uniforms that, we do get dirty and we don't want to be taking those contaminants home again. And then the clean storage. So again, we talk about our public education materials. We talk about our smaller inventory items. There's got to be space allocated for all of those kind of items. So using all of this information and taking all of this into consideration, in addition to knowing what I've seen in other fire stations, what I've done in other fire station builds, speaking with our officers, speaking with our firefighters, that's where we developed the concept floor plan, which you can see in Appendix J. That is a concept that includes all of the required spaces that I've discussed. They're not blown out of proportion. I mean, as you can see, I've shown, what the occupancy rating into the building code is. It's one of those that we're kind of at that point where I don't want to set us into a position where we build it, we're at max capacity the day we open, and I don't want to put us in a position where we're in the mid-use of the future of the building and we're at a point where we're having to put on an unnecessary or a costly addition. That's kind of how I've taken the approach, and that's the concept that the spatial needs or the requirements that I've presented here today.
Okay, thank you, Chief. So the recommendation is that Fire Staff Report 003-2020 respecting Joint Emergency Services Facility Project Update, Spatial Needs Assessment be received for information. Of a mover and a seconder for that, please. Put it on the floor for discussion. Councillor Van Vliet moves it, seconded. Councillor Cridland, and discussion. None? Councillor Van Vliet. Councillor Van Vliet.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say it's a great report, Chief. I don't have anything negative to say about this. My biggest concern was with all of our existing fire halls, the last sentence is the personnel are not provided the space or facilities for cleaning, storage, and decontamination. That really stood out with me. I don't like the fact that all these firefighters are going home in all this bunker gear and their kids are in their cars or what have you. This really hit home with me because not only do I know a lot of these firefighters, I helped raise some of them, so it's a big concern for me. So I think we're on the right track here.
Councillor McClellan.
I don't have any real problems with any of this. I worry about what the cost is going to be. And just the other thing is where the apparatus bays are, we need to make sure there's enough room to the side so that we can add to this if we do. So we leave enough land, and hopefully it's a steel structure that you can add another piece to and add a 25-foot bay by whatever the depth is, and you get 2 more bays out of it, or add 50 feet and you get 4 more bays if the town grows. But it's, so I think it's just how you build it so that you can add on to that. And this is going to be a big nut to pay for. I think maybe before we get going with an architect and spending a bunch of money, that we get this thing blown up to a size that everybody can read, and we have some public meetings about this before we just go and say, yeah, we're gonna go build it. There's somewhere between $5.5 and $8 million in here, depending on where we go on it. And I'm a little worried about that.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Cridlin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, a lot of information finally for us to, I know you've done a lot of work, so finally to be able to look at it all, it's going to take some time. You're not looking for any decisions tonight, you're just looking for us to raise things, so thank you for giving that space up. I'd just like to talk about the training room. So when I spoke to some people, when I could at the convention, the training room was something that was, it was thought that, multi-purpose, like we have a training center, we have space that's used once, when you need it. So, I mean, I think that's an area that you can decide to put that anywhere in a community and have more people to be able to access it. So I don't really see this fire station as being really accessible to the public. Everything I kind of read, it was going to be rare that the public gets in there and does stuff. So our community hall, I was happy to see that it's now a evacuee center. But can you just talk a little bit about the pros and cons of a training room, and if we don't have a training room, what's that going to do to the overall plan? Thank you.
So with regards to the EOC training room, in every plan that has ever been produced for the municipality, the fire station's included a training area. To not have the training, and even if you look at the lot that we purchased, it was to include to the west, down the road, lands for training. So to not have a training room and EOC included, again, that places us here. In the event of a declared long-term disaster, we're operating at a here, and although it works, it's not really a conducive workplace. It's one of those places where the public is coming. They know this is council chambers. I mean, if you're going to do a media scrum, you're going to do it here. You're disrupting emergency operations for your media scrum. Again, to do it at the community center, if that's our shelter, we're not having that closed workspace required to work. If we didn't have a training, so I'll go back to the training room. Again, if the expectation is that we use the community center as our training hall, we're now taking all of our equipment, driving it to here, doing our training, driving back to the fire hall to do our practical evolutions, come back here to do our debriefs. Like, it's just logistically, it's a bit of a nightmare when we could just come to the fire hall, train, and go home.
And Mr. CAO?
And Mr. Fire Chief, could you advise how often training happens?
So we train every week, and then the association meets once a month as well. So we train 40 times a year, and the association meets 12. And that's regular, and then we also have our weekend trainings on top of that.
Okay, any Councillor Cridlin?
Thank you for that. And then another idea in terms of helping us, get the right amount and, benefit from all of your work you've done is other municipalities have actually kind of created a tour where they take council and staff and firefighters and offer X number of sites of bad builds and good builds. Things I've heard from the residents is they just don't want this to be one that didn't go right, and there are examples of that. So if that might also help just sort of make sure that we don't go in the wrong direction, if that's a possibility to do over the short term.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, at our Monday morning mayor's briefing, every Monday morning, we actually discussed that, about lining that up to take council on a tour of a number of fire stations, just average standard fire stations that will serve our need. I think that would give us a much better spatial idea of what is required and what we're looking at. I think that I think we asked the fire chief to go ahead and organize that. So that will be forthcoming fairly soon. This is a huge amount of money that we are going to spend, but it is for a long-term growth and development of the township to last, I would hope, 75 years. So we wanted to make sure that we do get it right, because it is a fair bit of money. And so going to look at some other fire stations was a great idea. The chief had that idea and jumped on board with that quick and said, yeah, let's get that done. So that's being organized as we speak. Any other questions? Will, were you looking to speak to that? So, Councillor Gilmore?
Well, my only comment is how impressed I am with how well the report's been done, and I'm going into this will begin my 6th year now of the discussion regarding the fire department, and finally seeing, the manifestation of a lot of hard work, and things were going on before my term in 2014, but now I sense that we're gaining some traction, and I concur with Councillor McClellan that we need to now begin the process of public engagement and get people, totally informed. I think generally our people are supportive and realize that we need to do this, but that comes out of just sort of a feeling without a lot of information. So now we're starting to get a lot of information, some traction, and some direction. So just, compliments to you and your group for putting this kind of information out. I know this took a lot of work, and very impressed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gilmore. And just to echo comments along that line, the work that is done in here is a lot of research and standards from right across North America, which it has been proven that in the fire station world and fighting fires, that these are all best practices. And it's important that we look to that. It'd be really irresponsible on our part to build a fire station, and in no time at all, where Ministry of Labor is saying, hey, you didn't do this or you didn't do that. These are standards that have been developed to protect the firefighters, to provide the best service to the public. And I know it's an expensive bill, but we are at that point. It's a breaking point. We can't get new equipment to put in our buildings because it doesn't fit. And so, we really have no choice but to move forward on this. And as Councillor Gilmore said, it's been 6 years, and it really is time where we're getting down to the short strokes, and it really is time to get down to it and see if we can't get this building built in the next 1 to 2 years tops. So we have the motion on the floor, moved and seconded. All in favor of receiving this report? And that is carried. Okay, we move on to review of correspondence. C-25-2020. Correspondence dated the January 14th, 2020 from Antimar Kumar, Director of Esso Gas Bar Station and LCBO Convenience Outlet, requesting municipal authority to remain open on holidays as per the LCBO Agency Store Manual. The floor is open for discussion on that. Comments? Councillor Van Vliet?
Councillor McClellan and I were just discussing, we didn't even know this store had a liquor license.
He came in, I'm going to say 6 months ago, came into the office, and I'm not sure who I met him with, but he just said, was wondering if there was any opposition to him applying for an LCBO license. And of course I said, well, no, you can apply, that's up to you. And that's the last I heard of it as well. So obviously he was successful, I would think. Councillor McClellan?
I don't have a problem with the guy across the street is open those days. Why would we discriminate against this gentleman?
Any other comments? Actually, I'm not opposed as well because, it's a holiday weekend and you're having family in. There's a large population along the lakeshore there. It's either, you patronize a Wainfleet business or you're on the road into Port Colborne to pick up something that you forgot for your Christmas dinner or whatever. So I'm not opposed to it, and it's actually an excellent way to help develop our businesses in Wainfleet. So. Okay, so can I have a motion on that to allow that to happen? Councillor
I'll move.
Cridlin
Yeah, so thank you, Mayor.
makes a
Sorry.
motion.
Yes, I'll make that motion then, please, to approve it.
Seconder, Councillor McClellan, all in favor? And that is carried. Okay, we have no bylaws listed on the agenda. Any notices of motion? Okay, seeing none. I'm supposed to read according to Meredith, says read from Meredith. Council now move into closed session under section 239-2B, a personal matter about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. One item, a matter pertaining to an identifiable employee. Mover, seconder for that, please. Seconder, okay, Councillor Cridlin and Councillor Gilmore, all in favor, moving into closed session. And that is passed. We'll move into closed session. Thank you.